Early on in this Serie A season, it's Immobile!
Only for you, Laziali all over the world.
Superb penalty! Sends the Olimpico wild. Lazio in front.
Vittorio Campanile.
Honestly, seeing what happened with the last captains of Lazio, I will give it to Djordjevic.
And Alasdair McKenzie.
So I'm just kind of going to wait beside my phone for the rest of the week and see what happens. But I suppose officially I am a free agent in the football world, so...
Proud to present
Leaves Calabria on his backside. Oh, clever turn inside!
Lazio Lounge.
Ciro, the hero who burst Milan's bubble. A hat-trick for Immobile. Lazio nearly out of sight.
The best Lazio's podcast
Immobile
in
against
English.
Musacchio. This time he picks the pass for Luis Alberto.
For you, every week after Lazio's match.
Lazio on fire in the rain.
Welcome, Laziali all over the world. Welcome to another episode of Lazio Lounge, episode 21. I'm Vittorio Campanile, and back after his trip in India, we have Alasdair McKenzie. Hello, Alasdair. How are you?
Hello, yeah, very good. Very excited to be back again. I mean, it's getting ridiculous now. It seems like every time I'm away, Lazio perform even better than the last time. So I mean, 6-1 is not the best time for me to have been away, but you know, my diplomatic mission was a success, and I've come back with lots of Indian Lazio followers now.
Yeah, you know, if you weren't here after the Supercoppa, your position would have started to become dangerous, huh? 6-1
under serious pressure.
Absolutely. I mean, Sassuolo and Milan were two great victories, and you weren't here.
Yeah, it's sad. It's well, it's not sad. It's fantastic, but yeah, I mean, you know, if anyone wants me to leave a podcast in order to try and continue this run, then maybe the Rome derby would be a good time for me to go away.
Yeah, we have to see what happened against Juventus. By the way, I'm not calling you anymore Lazio Braveheart because Kilkito wrote me a couple of weeks ago saying that you are not the only Lazio Braveheart. So I'm sorry, Alasdair, but...
It's absolutely heartbreaking. I knew I was on a limited time span with that nickname. It was too good to be true.
Anyway, I forgot to ask you why you become a Lazio fan.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is the question we've been trying to ask all our followers this week, so I suppose it's only right that I do as well. So for me, it started when I was really quite young. I mean, when I was growing up, I'm from the north of Scotland, and my local team is a team called Ross County. And to begin with, when I was first following them, they were in the very bottom division in Scottish football. So everybody basically needed another team because they just weren't good enough. I could never have foreseen what's happened since, which is that they've actually risen up into the Premiership. But anyway, that's another story. So basically, at the time, there was a lot of Italian football on TV, a superb programme called Football Italia, which a lot of our British audience will know about. I was already very into Italy because it was the first place I'd been on holiday to, and I loved Italian culture and so on. And when I was about 8 years old, I was watching a game on TV with my brother, and he said, I'm supporting Leeds United in this game. And I said, all right, well, I'm going to support Lazio then. And from that moment on, I just followed them, and I got more and more interested. I did a lot of reading about them. I started watching them every week, and it basically just turned into, they turned into my number one club, and kind of have been ever since. So I have a few things to thank for it happening, but it happened. I mean, I've spent a lot of my life explaining to people why as well. So I've managed to make that answer quite streamlined by now.
I'm wrong, or Lazio lost that match against Leeds United?
You know what? The funny thing is, I can't even remember. Yeah, it was quite a long time ago. That must have been about 97 or so, 98 maybe. I can't remember. But yeah, actually, the season I started properly following Lazio, I think, was just after they signed Gaisca Mendieta. And funnily enough, one of my email addresses still has the word Geiske in it because I set it up on the back of that signing, being really excited by it. And we all know how that went, an utter disaster. But
now I understand why. Anyway, we got so many people replying to our post. It's simply unbelievable. There's some stories that are amazing, and it's great. I mean, it's simply unbelievable. Obviously, I don't tell you why I'm a Lazio fan. I come from Rome, so everybody can understand why. But, you know, all your guys around the world, it's simply unbelievable to see how many Lazio fans are there. And I still believe we didn't reach the big ones. You know, I think there are a lot of Lazio fans outside there that doesn't know our podcast. So
yeah, well, hopefully not for long. But you're right. I mean, we've had responses from people from all over the world here. Obviously, what got us going on this theme that we thought it would be a nice thing to address during the international break was the fact that Rami came onto the show last week, and you asked him then, and he talked about how he played with them on FIFA, which was quite a nice response. And yeah, we've had absolutely loads of responses. So, I mean, should we start reading some of these out, do you think?
Yeah, go on.
Okay, so some of the ones we've had through Twitter to begin with. Jan said he's a Lazio supporter because of his dad, who's a Laziale, which is fair enough. He's supporting them from Australia. His first game was a 1-0 home win against Inter. Craig Webster said watching the 4-4 game against Milan in the title-winning season as an 8-year-old, that would be good enough probably. Loved the kit, the stadium and Italian football in general.
I was so disappointed after that match, so disappointed. I think we were winning 3-1. I was there in Curva Nord, and you know, I thought finally that year we will beat AC Milan. I think Salah scored twice in that match. And
Vittorio, if you were disappointed during a title-winning season, you're never going to be happy.
I mean, after that match, you know, Shevchenko, I hated him. He was always scoring against Lazio. Every single match, Shevchenko would have scored against Lazio, even if he was injured. It was incredible. I hate him.
Right, well, that's a subject for another day.
Yeah.
It's amazing how many of these responses are about particular matches, actually, because there's another one here from R.A. who said that the 4-1 win against Juventus in 2000 was my first ever experience watching football on TV. It was love at first sight. I mean, I think for so many of us, just the access to being able to watch Italian football was such a big thing. I mean, it sounds quite obvious, but then again, for a worldwide audience back then in the late 90s, early 2000s, it wasn't necessarily something you could have expected. So that was fantastic. And obviously Lazio's team back then was so phenomenally good that that's helped create all these Lazio fans around the world. But then, interestingly, Greek Stav, whose name you've probably heard on the show before because he's always asking us questions, and he's brand new Lazio fan. He said he's only started supporting Lazio because of when Lucas Leiva became a Lazio player, and he says the presence of fellow ex-Liverpool player Luis Alberto helped as well. But you're more than welcome, and it's a good time to join, judging from what's happened so far this season. What else do we have? Serge Alvarez, he supports Lazio from Russia. He said he was a 12-year-old kid. It was a Winners' Cup semi-final against Lokomotiv Moscow on TV. He also says it was love at first sight. Paolo Federici has dad's from Rome, but he grew up north of London in St Albans. He has a family of 10 who are all Lazio fans.
You know what? I was surprised. I thought a lot of English fans were thanks to Paul Gascoigne. Instead, no one wrote about Gazza. I thought, Gazza and Simeone were probably one of the reasons why Lazio in the 90s were so popular outside Europe. But
I'm sure there are people out there who do have that kind of reason, but I think we have Gaza to thank as well, because of the fact that this TV program Football Italia was set up basically on the back of Gaza's move to Lazio, and he was such a cult hero in English football and British football generally at the time. I mean, even in Scotland, he was immensely popular because he spent time at Rangers as well. So I think because of him, that's kind of indirectly or directly helped more Lazio fans kind of prop up around the world, just because he was, the reason they set up this amazing coverage of the Italian game.
Or do you think our target is younger and so they weren't alive when Gaza was playing for Lazio?
I don't know. I mean, it seems like we've got a lot of people answering here who are talking about, the late 90s, early 2000s, which, it's the same for me. That was when I started following Lazio. So I think credit to all of us who kind of picked it up at that stage when Lazio were absolutely brilliant and winning everything, and we're still here now after all these years didn't give up. And I used to joke about that all the time, how ever since I started supporting Lazio, they got steadily worse and worse every season, but on the way back up now. Here's another one from Din Viet An. Hello everyone, my name's Viet. I come from Vietnam. My passion began with Lazio from a match between Chelsea and Lazio in the Champions League in 1999-2000. Do you remember that one?
Absolutely. Mihajlovic scoring on a free kick. We were losing 1-0. And then Inzaghi and Mihajlovic 2-1.
At that time, I was really impressed with Lazio's style, especially Veron and Mihajlovic's goal. The red card of Couto made me see the team come from Italy are very tedious. Completely different from English clubs like Chelsea, Liverpool, Manchester. That's special. Moreover, Serie A was only live in Vietnam from 97. I don't have much time and conditions to learn more about the Italian team, just through newspapers. After that, I started to learn about Lazio, the history, the players. From then on, I knew I had a passion for the team. And now, after a lot of ups and downs, I'm still here. What we were just saying, my love for the team is still very much, because I know Lazio makes me have passions to turn on the TV every weekend. No other team makes me feel that way. And I've not missed Lazio's match since then, all through the Champions League, Serie A, Coppa Italia, Avanti Lazio from Vietnam. That's a very nice message, that one. We're touching a lot of different continents here.
Absolutely. There's a big Lazio community in Asia, and I think the fact that Lazio played and won a Supercoppa in China against Inter, Mourinho's Inter, was huge to increase the Lazio popularity there. And we talked about it. It's a shame that Lazio has a TV channel or radio, but nothing in English, nothing done in China or Asia, that it's a continent that has a lot of passion for football, and especially for European football. So, there could be a huge market there, and it's a shame that a team like Lazio is not doing nothing.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, this is, I think, one of our very first shows. This was something we were asked about, wasn't it? It was what Lazio could do in order to kind of increase its global fan base and, market itself better. And I think it's really nice to see all these messages from fans all around the world. But yeah, you're right. There are definitely clubs who do that a lot more successfully than Lazio. I think it would be great for Lazio to compete in more prestigious pre-season tournaments and maybe tour in. I mean, Indonesia, for example, is one that stuck out for me quite a while, maybe 5 or 6 years ago. Be impressed if anyone ever remembered this, but I actually ran a blog about Lazio while I was living there, and I was always amazed that when I went onto the analytics of the blog I was running, the majority of the readers were from Indonesia, and we've got some messages from some Indonesians here this week as well. So I mean, there's definitely a big kind of market there that the club could tap into.
Absolutely. Do you remember? I think 4 or 5 years ago, when Muslera was still playing for Lazio, I think Uruguay had a friendly match there, and at the airport, Muslera and Gonzalez, they were surrounded by Lazio fan in Indonesia. It was, there is a video on YouTube. It's simply unbelievable, you know. And there's a big community. There's big fan of Serie A there. So, you know, you can increase Lazio fan there easily if you start doing something. We are trying, but we are not the official website. So let's see what happens.
Yeah. Well, I'll read out one of these Indonesia ones now, actually. This is from Revival Flames, who says, "One day in 1998, I was 12 years old. My father gave me the flag with a Lazio logo. I was very curious. Then I saw the game that Lazio played. And wow, I loved their game. I instantly liked Nedved at once, and I said at that moment I became a Laziale. But when Nedved moved to Juve, I was very sad. I decided to stop being a Laziale. Never again watched the Lazio games. Even all Serie A matches he stopped watching. That went on for 3 years, but finally one day I realised I can't forget Lazio. Whoever the players are, there's no bigger club. They're not bigger than the club, sorry. Then I decided to support Lazio again until now, and Nedved remains my favourite player ever." It says, "Sorry for my bad English." That wasn't bad English, don't worry.
Mine is worse.
Forza Lazio from Indonesia, Lazio. Mine's worse, probably, to be honest. But yeah, that's a really nice story. We've got some quite long ones as well, Vittorio. I don't know, do you want to read one of these out?
No, your English is so good that I like enjoying reading.
I feel like I'm talking too much. Okay, well, here's one from Nigel Gann, who's been listening very faithfully, so thanks, Nigel. So, it was the school holidays in 1993, and spending hours on my homework wasn't my idea of fun. We've all been there. Quality television programs were sparse, but just as I was about to switch off the television, I came across a channel where a football match was being shown. Nothing captures a boy's attention better than a game of football, and this one got me particularly interested. Not because it featured the usual English teams, such as Manchester United or Liverpool, but rather it was a game of Italian football. Although I'd supported the Italian national team during the 1990 World Cup, I'd yet to meet my favourite club. Then everything changed. SS Lazio were playing Inter Milan. I did not know either of the teams, but it was watch that or get back to my homework, so I watched. One player in particular caught my eye. He was wearing the sky blue colours of Lazio, had beautiful blonde hair, and looked every bit the charming young man. This number 11 was a constant threat to the opposition team in blue and black stripes, whom I learnt were Inter. Whenever he received the ball, the cheers from the crowd grew louder, and the match commentator's tone grew much more animated. It was clear that the fans loved him, and they knew he would create something magical. True enough, from a brilliant counter-attacking move by Lazio, this player received a pass from a teammate and with a terrific burst of speed accelerated away from his marker. Inter were caught out in defence as they committed too many players forward. It was 2 versus 2. The Inter defenders ahead of him were backtracking anxiously as if expecting him to pounce. They had their eyes fixed on the ball, and slowly it looked as if they were ready to hack him down. But the footwork of the number 11 was nimble, his legs a wickedly fast blur, and the ball looked as though it was glued to his feet as he effortlessly wriggled his way past the defenders. He had a teammate to his right but decided against passing the ball out to him. He used his pace to outrun his opponents, and just when the crowd thought he was going to release the ball, he surprised everyone by taking on another defender before burying his shot into the net with his lethal left foot. The stadium erupted. The match commentator went absolutely wild as he screamed, "Yes!" It was a truly sensational goal. With his arm raised, he ran towards the home fans in celebration. His teammates rushed towards him and they celebrated together under the stands, where the supporters of Lazio had huge flags and flares. It was a wonderful spectacle. I sat on the couch, speechless, as I absorbed the game on TV. My mouth so wide open, I could have swallowed a watermelon. It was love at first sight. I was blown away and mesmerised by this wonderful player. His name was Giuseppe Signori. More importantly, it was this goal and this man that kick-started my lifelong passion for the Biancoceleste. For the 13-year-old watching from his home in Singapore, it was clear that he had finally found his team. Ciao e forza Lazio. As an absolutely amazingly written story, Vittorio.
Yeah. And Nigel, I don't know if the people who are hearing us wrote an amazing book, 10,000 Kilometers for You, about his love of Lazio and how many times he goes from Singapore to Rome to watch Lazio, and it's simply unbelievable. And we have in common our hero. I mean, I started watching Lazio at the stadium, and there was Giuseppe Signori. He was terrific. He was, the symbol of that Lazio. I really loved him. And I thought it was an incredible shame that he never won nothing with Lazio. He deserved to win something for all he did. So sometimes football, it's cruel, because if Lazio reach that type of level, it's mostly thanks to Beppe Signori performance, 3-time top scorer in the Serie A with an average team. So,
incredible player.
Yeah, I think he was really unlucky that he didn't win nothing. We have another long message from Rob Campana. I don't know if you read it already, but he says, I became a Lazio fan when my grandmother came back from Italy in 2000 with a Lazio 32 Vieri jersey. As an Italian Canadian, I always kept an eye on Serie A, but never more than that as a teenager. I was much more into football and baseball. I think football, he intends NFL. Once I reached my late 20s, I started to follow Serie A much more closely and never forgot my tie to Lazio. From that gift, my now deceased grandmother brought me back from her hometown of San Vittore del Lazio all those years ago. It's 4 years I follow the team closely, and your podcasts make that more possible than before due to my so Italian. Thank you, Rob. My question for this week is, how exactly does it work with the 2 Portuguese youngsters we signed over the summer? So we're already moving in the question time. Are they eligible to play this season, both domestically and in Europe? And what is your short-term and long-term project for them as Lazio player? Thanks again. Thanks, Rob, for watching us from Montreal, Canada. Al, do you want to reply?
Another fantastic message. I've been blown away by these responses this week, actually. Which question should we start with?
In terms of the
Portuguese youngsters, I think that when they first arrived, we talked about this, it seemed pretty clear what was going on here, in that there had been some sort of agreement to actually bring them to the club through Mendes as part of the Keita negotiations, and I didn't really expect them to play a part in the first team. I haven't really changed my opinion about that. I mean, to be honest, for a kind of 17, 18-year-olds to actually be able to break into this team, they're going to have to be doing something spectacular. And the other thing is that the positions they play, in a forward line or in midfield, the competition for places is so high there that it's quite hard to see when they're going to be given any opportunities. I think it's one for the future, isn't it? I mean, I can understand why people perhaps would like to see more of them because of the money that's been spent, or the reported money that's been spent at least. But I think with players of that age, it's not necessarily a bad thing to bide your time and wait until Inzaghi thinks they're ready.
Yeah, I think it was a nice move. You bought 2 of the best prospects of Portuguese football, and if you look, in the last 10 years or so, Portugal has always brought some very good talent players to football, and those 2 were supposed to be the best of those ages. Manchester United, Barcelona, Paris Saint-Germain, a lot of top clubs were trying to buy them, and the fact that Lazio did in the end is simply amazing. I don't think they're going to play this season. Maybe in Coppa Italia they're going to have a chance. They can play in Europe League because they are under 21, both of them, so they can be added in the B list, so they're not in the A list Lazio gave. Same thing for Serie A and Coppa Italia. The fact is, crossing finger, there's not going to be Inzaghi won't need to make them play if another injury emergency doesn't comes out in attack or midfield. But they'll have 1 year to learn Lazio and Italian football. That will be very important. For example, Pedro Neto yesterday played in the friendly match and was simply astonished. He was really, really good. So you can see there is a talent there. Don't think they need to rush to play. I think Inzaghi will give them time, and if they deserve to play, then they'll play this season. Otherwise, I think they're going to play next year.
Yeah, and it's nice to know that you've got talents coming through underneath, and I think the attention is going to on them is obviously going to be a lot higher than the attention on other youth team players, just because of the money that's been spent and the kind of media attention they got when they signed. So that's inevitable, but I think it's worth just treating them in the same way and hoping that it comes right, because potential is a funny thing, as we know. I mean, how many new Messis have you heard about in the last decade or so, and not many of them actually fulfill that kind of tagging. So I think rather than us trying to make something of them too soon, it's probably more sensible to let them continue their development in the same way as most young players do. And Inzaghi, as we know, is not afraid to give young players a chance. So hopefully he kind of starts to phase them in when he thinks they're ready.
Okay, a little break for us. We come back replying to your questions.
Lukaku, occhio che ha messo il turbo Lukaku, Lukaku, alla di rigore, gol! 3-2 Murcia, l'ha messa dentro Murcia, dentro, 3-2, l'ha piazzata lui, la Nouvelle Vague biancoceleste. Lukaku ha fatto quello che ha voluto, Murcia l'ha messa dentro, Inzaghi l'ha messa dentro, tutti l'abbiamo messa dentro, guardiamoci tutti in faccia, 3-2.
I think you all prefer these jingles.
I think, what people don't realise is that's actually a recording of Vittorio inside his bedroom while watching the game.
On the sofa, jumping on the sofa. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, what were you doing when Murcia scored?
Running around.
So we know what's happening. So shall we start with questions now?
Yes. Got a fair few to get through again. So obviously the next game after the international break is going to be away to Juventus, and that's the topic of discussion for most people this week. I think the first thing we should probably address is the injuries. I'm just trying to find the actual question. I know we've got some sort of question about injuries. Oh, here we go. Rami Elgendi, our star.
We miss you, Rami, when you want to come back.
Yeah, great work last week. A bit too good. I'm a bit worried now. But so he's asking, who do you think will be ready for the UV game? There are a lot of reports on who's coming back and who isn't. Vittorio?
Yeah, it looks like Strakosha is good to go. He will start training with the others next Monday, so he shouldn't be having any doubts for the Juventus match. He was just a little bit tired after the season, so he came back earlier. He wasn't able to play with Albania, but nothing dangerous, nothing that bad. So he will start training tomorrow, Monday, directly, so no doubt about them. The situation of Lukaku, it's a little bit more worrying. Again, the Belgian player, it's proved to be very physical, very powerful, but this is something that affects your performance and your injury. And again, he's having a lot of muscle injuries. And so I don't know if Inzaghi will risk him. The doctor said he should be able to train at least beginning of half of next week, so around Wednesday. So theoretically, he could be fit for the match against Juventus. Then you have to see how he performs, if he still feels something there, or if he's good to go. There are some doubts on Wallace. Theoretically, it was 30-40 days, so he should be nearly ready for Juventus. Again, the question there is it worth risking him for that match, or maybe give some others a chance and give him time to recover to be sure that he doesn't get injured again. De Vrij should be able to play. He stayed at Rome to recover from the injury. More than the injury, the fatigue he had after Lazio Sassuolo. So I would say, for sure, Strakosha, there is doubt on De Vrij and Lukaku.
I think with De Vrij, my concern is probably more whether he's actually got 90 minutes in him. I mean, obviously he was taken off during the Sassuolo game, and had to say no to the international call-up as well because of his injury problems. So it's to be honest, it's we talked about this before, how the international break is coming at a good time in terms of the injuries, but it's actually a bit disappointing in a way that we're not coming back from the international break with more options available than perhaps we would have hoped going into it. So, I mean, the next question going on from that injury update from Stefanos Hendry is Luis Felipe good enough to play against Juve's strikers?
Well, you cannot tell at the moment,
Exactly. The thing is, we've still not seen much of him, have we? And Juve's strikers are clearly some of the best in the league. So the thing is, there aren't many defenders in the league who are capable of stopping, Dybala, as we've seen this season already. It's a big ask for a young, inexperienced player to be thrown into a game like that. But the thing is, we don't really have many other options. So I don't know, Vittorio, how would you line the defence up in the current conditions, I suppose?
Again, I think it's so depending on De Vrij. If he plays, then there are different options. I think that the defence we saw against Sassuolo is a good option, with Patrick playing on the right side, because he's fast enough to play against Dybala. It's not his position, but with De Vrij near him, it could be the best option there. Obviously, if Wallace is fit, then I wouldn't have any doubt. Radu on the left side, De Vrij in the middle, and Wallace on the right. But if Wallace is not ready, probably I will go with Patrick more than Felipe, Luis.
Yeah, and I think I would definitely rule out the option for a game like this of putting Lucas back there, for example, because I think he's going to have an absolutely crucial role in midfield during that game, because that's a battle Lazio are going to have to win in order to get something out of this game. And it's something that they did so well in the Supercoppa, was dominating the midfield. So we're going to need a big game from him again in the middle. But on the mention of him, Walid Mohammed has asked us if we need to get a sub for Leyva. Can he play all season? And I suppose, Vittorio, that's something we have talked about before, is the fact that he's come in and really impressed, made it look very effortless coming into the team, but we don't really have any ready-made replacement for him in terms of someone who can perform that role. So I would say yes. In January, I'd really like to see another option as a kind of holding midfielder coming in to offer cover. But at the same time, I can't see it happening, knowing how our January business normally goes. I'd be very surprised.
Yes, Lucas Leiva impact has been amazing. Coming from a different league, completely different league. He had an interview this week with Fox Brazil, if I'm not wrong, and said the impact was great, and he still feel he's not 100%. He still have room to improve. So that's gonna be really exciting to see. As we said, we don't have a replacement for Lucas Leiva. Di Gennaro, it's another type of player. He's more a playmaker. So Lazio will have to adapt a little bit without Lucas Leiva. But at the same time, you have Murgia that could come in and change a little bit. I think in Inzaghi's mind, Parolo is the substitute of Lucas Leiva. He can play in that position. Obviously, Parolo is a different player from Lucas Leiva, but he can do both attacking and defending phase. I think better than Murgia and Di Gennaro. And Murgia can replace Parolo. So
I think the other really interesting thing, we're going to have to see how it goes with this, but the fact that Luis Alberto was used in that kind of Biglia role in pre-season, it'll be interesting to see if Inzaghi decides to go back to that as the season goes on, because like you say, Di Gennaro, I don't think we can rely on him being the kind of stand-in for every time Lucas is out, and particularly once Felipe Anderson and Nani are at full fitness. It'll be interesting to see how Inzaghi decides to rotate that. At the moment, you'd say that you can't really move Alberto's position because he's been so good in an attacking sense, playing behind the striker. But I think as the season goes on, that might be an option. And the other thing, like you were saying about Parolo, I think he can definitely fill in there. But again, he's one who's not got any rest during the international break. He's playing for Italy, and he's 32, 33 now, and we're going to have to rotate him throughout the season. He's not going to be able to play every single week. So there are lots of options in midfield, which is good, but I think Inzaghi's going to have to be very clever about the way that he rotates the midfield throughout the season.
Yes, I agree, and hopefully the trequartista position will get a little bit crowded in the next coming weeks, because Nani is getting fit. Yesterday in the friendly match he scored, he played very well. Felipe Anderson is coming back, so there could be the chance that Luis Alberto can play a little bit near the midfield position and give Felipe Anderson and Nani the trequartista position. That's going to be interesting to see, and how often Inzaghi will rely on that, because it could be a risky tactic, but it could be even really enjoyable. The skill there is simply amazing. Add Milinkovic-Savic there, and Lazio midfield could be really the best in Europe.
Well, it's something that we've had a couple of questions about, is actually the kind of formation changes that may or may not happen. Waleed Mohammed has asked is there a need to be flexible with the formation changing to a 4-3-3, or is 3-5-2 more than enough for this season? And Greekstav said the similar thing. When Felipe Anderson and Nani become regularly and reliably available, does Inzaghi persist with 3-5-2 or switch the formation and strategy? This is, again, something I suppose we've addressed before, isn't it? I think 4-3-3 is certainly one that would allow Inzaghi to get Nani and Anderson into a team very easily, but I'm not convinced he will. I think he's managed to make his 3-5-2 very flexible in itself, in terms of having either one Luis Alberto behind the striker or a kind of two and a kind of 3-4-2-1. I think he has a few different options in how he can use that system, and because it's been working so effectively so far, what I would expect to happen is that he persists with that strategy and tries to find the best way possible of getting those players into it. But I don't think there's any hurry with that. I don't know if you agree with this, Vittorio, but when a team is playing well and on form, I don't think you want to change too much. So yes, we know Felipe Anderson can be a phenomenal player. We know the ability that the kind of prestige Nani has come into the club with, but I don't think there's any hurry for Inzaghi to put them into his starting 11, because everything's been working so well so far that for me they would be options you'd want to have a look at in your midweek games more than options you want to put into your Juventus games right now.
There are a couple of points here. One is talking about the defense. And one thing both Simone Inzaghi and Faris, that is the second coach of Simone Inzaghi, said is really interesting. He said he didn't want to switch to a four-line defense because the movement are so clear now to the three defenders. They give them confidence because they know what they have to do. Everybody of the defense know that movement. So changing from a 3-line to a 4-line would create confusion, and that's something they keep a lot of mind, and so that's why they don't want to switch. Talking about the rest, everybody's is saying Lazio's playing a 3-5-2. No, Lazio is playing a very changing formation. Yes, there's three defenders, but then apart from that, everything is very fluid. We saw in Supercoppa Luis Alberto and Milinkovic-Savic playing near Ciro Immobile, so it was more 3-3-2-1. I'm missing one. Probably it was 3-4-2-1. Then we saw with Casado, so it was a 3-5-1-1. Then we saw Luis Alberto moving between the lines of the strikers, so it was a 3-4-1-2. It's something that Inzaghi is very good in changing, and he has the players that can swap position very easily. Milinkovic-Savic can play near Immobile, Luis Alberto can play near Immobile, Milinkovic-Savic can play in midfield, same thing, Luis Alberto, etc., etc. So this gives the possibility of to Inzaghi to change a lot, and this creates a lot of problems, because if, let's say, Allegri prepares the team for Sunday match, saying, okay, be careful, we have to mark Milinkovic-Savic that plays very near to Immobile, then if Milinkovic-Savic goes and play with a midfielder, then the man that's marking Milinkovic-Savic doesn't know, do I have to follow Milinkovic-Savic? Do I keep back and double mark Immobile and things like that? So that's something very good for Lazio. So it's a very fluid tactics with the certainty of the three defenders that know very well the movement.
Yeah, and he's also got the option of, with the wing backs being more offensive or more defensive as well, which is quite nice. I mean, he's been really smart with like you've just explained, all the various ways he's managed to modify that strategy throughout the season so far. And I think once he has a full squad, he'll be able to do that even more regularly. And I think that fluidity, like you're saying, it must be so difficult to kind of counter, to set your team up against, because he's able to bring on players off the bench who are going to completely change the game. And Caicedo, for all his faults as a goal scorer, is definitely a physical presence who's going to really change things up when he comes off the bench. You've got the kind of raw pace and power of Lukaku and Maricic as a threat as well, and the variety of midfielders we've talked about. So I mean, he's able to really ask different questions of teams with what he's got within this system. So I don't think that's going to be something he's going to be in a hurry to change. I think as well, the one other point I wanted to make about the 4-3-3 is that for Inzaghi, I would imagine that within that system he would want his wingers to effectively off the ball be playing as wide midfielders and be able to kind of offer defensive cover. And I think if you're changing the system to a 4-3-3 in order to put Anderson and Nani on the wings, those are two players I wouldn't necessarily trust to be able to put in a good defensive shift. I think Anderson's got a lot better at that than he was, but it's still not offering the same kind of protection that the defence currently gets in the loose 3-5-2 system.
And one last thing is, in modern football, the subs have become more and more important. So if you start with the 3-5-2 and then, around the last 25 minutes, you put in Lukaku that is fresh and it's so powerful that creates a lot of problems, especially with the tired defender. And then you put in Felipe Anderson, again, same type of player who can change the match when defenders are very tired. Then you can make a big difference. We said it in the past years that one of the weaknesses of this Lazio was that they didn't have quality subs. Now they have it. So why change the tactics when you can bring them in and change the game?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Coming back to the Juventus game, just a simple question from Rami Algendi again. With the current situation, he says, what's the best that we can get from the Juve match? I think a win is definitely within the realms of possibility, just because we've already beaten them so far this season. So it's going to be fascinating, Vittorio, to see what's changed since the Supercoppa. If Allegri changes his team or has kind of learnt the lessons from that defeat. I think this is probably going to be one of the games of the season so far. We'd hoped that the Napoli game would have been as well, and obviously the injury problems really put an end to Lazio's challenge in that game. But this is going to be a really interesting tactical battle, I think, between Allegri and Inzaghi.
I think this season we saw something different. Lazio competing at the same level with the top teams. Supercoppa Italiana was the first time where we saw Lazio playing better than Juventus in the last years. Against Milan, there was no match. Honestly, Lazio, after the first 10 minutes, played much better than Milan and deserved to win. And same thing was happening with Napoli. Lazio was winning, and without the injuries, probably Lazio would have won that match. But things happen, episode changed that match. So now you have the chance to confirm that this Lazio is able to compete at the same level with the top teams. Now, we are not saying that Lazio is better than Juventus. If you take the roster Juventus has, no one can say that Lazio has better players. But 12, 30 players, maybe Lazio have best option, best solution. And Inzaghi have proved in the Supercoppa that he outplayed Allegri. So we're going to see what's going to happen. It's going to be even important to see how the players come back from the national break. We already saw that Lazio nearly lost 2 players like Strakosha and Lukaku. Juventus had a lot of players going out. Unfortunately, Higuain hasn't been called by Argentina, so he should be fresh. But it's always a sort of mystery. You never know how the players come back from the national break. So that's going to bring a little bit of uncertainty for this match. That's going to be interesting.
I think one of the first things we said after the Supercoppa win was that result is so significant beyond the fact of actually winning a trophy again and how good that was. But like you said, we've struggled so much against big teams in recent seasons. So the fact that we can go into that game as early as October knowing that we've already beaten Juventus this season, and Juventus obviously having just come off a really disappointing result against Atalanta, which they were leading that game by 2-0 and managed to draw it. So Atalanta are a good team, but they're not as strong a team as Lazio. So I think we can go into that game with a lot of confidence. Obviously, there's injury problems, but we've had injury problems for a while now and still managed to get results. So I don't see why not. Obviously, the Juventus Stadium is an incredible venue, incredibly difficult venue to go to get 3 points. But yeah, we can be positive about it because the team will go there with a belief they can beat them because they've already done it. And I don't think you can downplay the significance of that. Just coming back to one other question here, Vittorio, which is the last one kind of about the squad, I suppose. As Greek Stav was asking about what can Lazio or Inzaghi do if the unthinkable happens and Immobile loses form, is suspended or is injured. He's not even written out the full word because he doesn't want to type it out. Caicedo being an entirely different type of striker. I think that's a question we're really hoping we're not going to have to address on this podcast at any point because Lazio do have a dependence on Immobile. He's been absolutely sensational this season. I think the team can still perform well without him, but he is one of the key dangers of this team. And for me, if he ever picked up a serious injury, which touch wood, he's not going to do, there's no option but to go into the transfer market because we don't have enough in the squad to be able to fill the goals that we would lose by that.
One thing people doesn't remember is Lazio already have lost Felipe Anderson. So the attack is obviously relying only on Ciro Immobile. So when Felipe Anderson comes back, things are going to be a little bit different. But we don't have that type of striker on the roster. Palombi didn't prove to be ready yet. Caicedo is a different type of player. So at that point, it would be fundamental to see how Felipe Anderson performed in the new role. He had a very good summer, but you'll never know how he came back from this long injury. So we hope that Felipe Anderson would fill that role with Nani as well, etc. But there's not a real striker in Lazio team at the moment. So if that thing happened, I don't even want to think about it. Then I think or Felipe Anderson transform himself, or Caicedo start performing at a higher level and become a striker.
It would be interesting to see if once Nani and Anderson are both fit, if Inzaghi is actually tempted to try that, using one of them as a striker, just to see how it goes in a kind of Coppa game or a Europa League game. Because, for example, Napoli would have had absolutely no idea until Sarri tried playing Mertens as a centre forward. That seemed as strange an idea as it would now to try Anderson or Nani there, because it's a winger moving inside. But I would be tempted to just give that a go for 45 minutes and see how it looks, and if either of those players has the movement, the finishing ability to actually play in that role. I'm hoping there's no need for it, but it'd be quite interesting to see one of those players playing as a number 9 just for a small amount of time, just to see if there's any kind of potential there.
Everybody's curious to see how Felipe Anderson and Nani will play in that position, playing more central. They will have to in the 3-5-2, so I'm curious. Felipe Anderson played really, really well this summer, but it's a friendly match. You never know how much that will translate in a real Serie A or Europe League match. But I think Felipe Anderson near the goal would be a good solution, could be even more dangerous. So let's hope he comes back and prove it with Ciro Immobile near him, I hope.
Right, a couple more questions we got before we wrap up. First one's from Stephanus Hendry saying, how do you think the De Vrij contract situation will go? Contract situation's something we're an expert on now. I feel slightly positive about this, because I think hopefully it will end. I think the best case scenario here is that Lazio get De Vrij to sign a new contract with a release clause in it of 20-25 million euros. If that happens, I think that's fine. I would take that. And the way De Vrij's been playing so far this season, you might say that's not value for how good a player he is, but it's better than losing him for free. And it's quite clear by now that De Vrij isn't going to be too willing to sign a long-term contract without having some sort of release clause built into it. So I'm hopeful that will happen. And if that does happen, and he is signed for 25 million in the summer, it would be a shame to lose him, but you'd be a lot happier to lose him for that kind of money than to have the same kind of situation going on as we've seen throughout this summer.
And there have been quotes of De Vrij saying that his agent is talking with Lazio for the renewal, so that's a good sign. Again, 25 is not that much, but it's even true that the injury history of this player has concerned a lot of other teams. And think about the season. He already missed some matches, and he's doubtful to play against Juventus next Sunday. So we just started October, and he already missed some matches. So even if he's playing really, really well, he's improving, etc., his injury is still a question mark. And I don't know how many big clubs will come and spend a lot of money for a player who has injury history.
Yeah, I mean, that could almost be a blessing in disguise for Lazio.
Yeah, totally.
Lazio have behaved well throughout this as well. I mean, I think he's a better character than the likes of Keita and Biglia. I think he's been roped in discussions alongside those two because of having his contract running out at the same time. But he seems to really enjoy being in Rome, being at the club, and I think he does appreciate the fact that He spent a long time out injured, and the club's been patient with him and given him all his treatment, and the fans have responded really well to that as well. So I think he's a lot happier, he's in a better place, and hopefully that results in him getting a new deal. We might as well be optimistic about it. One final question, Vittorio, it's quite a big one. Not in words, but in implications. Jan says, do you think Inzaghi and Lazio can do what Simeone and Atletico became? I believe we can. Simeone and Atletico, I mean, it's an incredible success story. I remember being at the Europa League, I think it was the last 32 game between Lazio and Atletico in, I think it was 2011. And Simeone came under the Curva Nord and got an amazing reception. But at that time, Atletico were a reasonably uninspiring team and hadn't even started their journey. And what he's done with them since, taking them to the league title, Champions League finals, it's absolutely incredible. In order for Lazio to replicate that is quite a big ask. I think, first of all, Atletico managed to break the Barcelona-Real Madrid stronghold in Spain, which is an incredible thing to do. But I think Inzaghi and Lazio have a bigger competition at the top in terms of a bigger spread of clubs. Juventus have a dominant hold in Italy over the last few years, but in order for Lazio to push for a Scudetto, they're going to have to rely on Juventus, Napoli, Roma, Milan and Inter, all basically failing to put up an equal challenge. And given the investment and the squad that all those clubs have, it's asking a lot. I think we're definitely going in the right direction, but to be talking about Champions League finals and league titles already, I think let's take it one step at a time.
Yeah, absolutely. The thing is, Lazio and Inzaghi can bring to Lazio a couple of things that Simeone brought to Atletico Madrid. Passion. You have a manager that is a fan of the team, and you know he's going to bring everything to win, everything for every single match. He's going to try as hard as he can to win and achieve goals and trophy, etc. Then there's the club that has to obviously back up the player, the manager, and in a certain way, Lazio is doing it. Or obviously, a little bit like Atletico Madrid, they're not going for Neymar or players like that. They have to find the gem, like Milinkovic-Savic, like Luis Alberto. Luis Alberto is probably the biggest surprise of the season so far, and Lazio bought him for 5 million euros. So it's not a signing that any other clubs could have not doing it. So, it's quality of Iglitare to sign that type of player. And then there is the youngster coming up from the Primavera that if they're really well, if they turn up to be a star like Murcia is looking like, he's a Lazio fan, so he will tend to stay at Lazio and not play to become, seen by Real Madrid, Barcelona, and get signed from them. But he's playing because he wants to win with his team that is his team. So those two things have to match together, and Lazio can compete. Now, saying that they will reach a Champions League final or win the Scudetto, that's too far. But seeing this team compete for Serie A and maybe qualifying for the Champions League, yes, I think. And the other thing, I believe that Simone Inzaghi can bring a better football style that Simeone is doing. Now, the football of Simeone is not amazing to see, while Simone Inzaghi, and you have to give him credit to him, that even if the players change, Lazio still play a very good football. So that could help Simone Inzaghi as well and make Lazio a bigger team. And, you start from there, and then players can start saying, I like Lazio football. Simone Inzaghi is a great manager. I would like to play with him. And so maybe good players start going to Lazio because they think they're going to have success there. So, We'll see. But absolutely, I think there is some similarities there.
I think a couple of things that Inzaghi is showing he can do, which is in the Simeone mould, is basically getting the best out of the players he has available to him for a start. I mean, talking about that Lazio Atletico game, again, that was pretty much the same Atletico team that got to the Champions League final. I mean, he more or less had the same players. Guys like Juan Fran and Godin and Thiago in midfield. He had a squad of players that were underperforming, and with the same team, essentially went on to achieve those things. I think that's something Inzaghi's shown to be very good at, is actually getting the best out of the players he has available to him. He's got the best out of Immobile. He's got the best out of Milinkovic-Savic. There's Luis Alberto is the most recent example. And the other thing, Simeone style trait Inzaghi has is building a great team spirit, and you can see that this season a lot. This is a team that worked really hard for one another and are managing to get these results, and it seems like there's a great kind of atmosphere within the dressing room, which is very impressive considering quite a tumultuous summer with Bilia and Keita's situation, and he's managed to do that really well. So he's definitely going in the right direction. And I think all the fans as well are very happy to have somebody with a Lazio background in charge of the club. I think that's another significant thing that's also a similarity to Simeone at Atletico, a former player. I mean, he can definitely learn lessons from Simeone, but I do kind of hope he doesn't play the same style of football.
And I think Inzaghi play a much better football. Now, he hasn't got those type of players, but we'll see. I think he has time, and till the club will back him up with signing the players he wants, etc. Simone Inzaghi can succeed, and he will stay at Lazio.
Yeah. Well, that's our questions up for this week, Vittorio.
Yeah, I think it's over. We said again, we passed 1 hour of show again. So I hope you will keep watching the show till the end, even in international break weekend, and talk to you after Juventus Lazio, hoping in a good result for Lazio, obviously.
Yeah, looking forward to it. After a week without any Lazio, it'll be very nice to be able to watch them back in action again.
Okay, thank you very much, Alasdair, and have a nice week.
Cheers, you too.
And there it is. It's Lazio's moment.
Thanks for listening to this podcast. Remember, you can follow Lazio Lounge on Twitter and Facebook. Subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, Spreaker and YouTube. And always, Forza Lazio.
I'll tell you what, Lazio will be drinking copiously.